Um, I don't know if that one will.
And it's not gonna reach.
It's not gonna reach all the way over. No, there's not a portable one. Is your laptop hooked up?
What's the one behind
Because
you?
I was gonna say you can sit right here.
What's that one back there?
If it works, that might not even be hooked up. Right.
You got your glasses at least.
Yeah, at least that's most
You
important.
can see the pen.
Yeah, always. Hey, those microphones are loud. I can hear myself.
Me too. I can hear you. Get that away from us.
Please. No, keep it over there. Just pick it up.
I think it's because it's down.
No, it ain't.
All right, so thank you guys for joining us. Today, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the Neighborhood Preservation Committee meeting to discuss the East Campus neighborhood. Just for clarity, this is only a discussion. There is no new legislation being proposed at this moment. This is a discussion and a presentation from Mike Stanton and the SIUNA group members. His presentation is about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes. And then I've been told there's a few people that want to speak, so you'll get about 1 to 2 minutes to speak. So with me today, I have Councilor Hogan, Councilor Caldwell, President Hudson, Councilor Monto, Councilor Peniagua, Councilor Green, Councilor Schultz, and myself, Councilor Allen. And so now we're going to turn it over to Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Hello. I guess this is working. How did this meeting come about? Well, there was the hearing for the environmental impact statement for rezone Syracuse, and there were quite a few comments from the folks in the meeting about the university neighborhood. And at that point, Councilor Green came over and said, well, would you like to have a hearing just about the university neighborhood? And we said, yes, we would. And so it's been several weeks in the making, but now we're having that meeting. Wanted to just say that there are three important recent developments that we're here to discuss. The first major event has to do with the migration of students to the new student housing projects that we've all seen.
Speak into the microphone.
Can anybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. There are three major developments we'd like to talk about. The first has to do with the migration of students to the new housing projects we've all seen. New census data now shows that the total number of students living east of campus, and that's all the way out to Westmoreland, that whole area, has dropped significantly. It's down to the lowest level since 1970 now. Another major event is Syracuse University's new program to encourage employees' home ownership near campus. We've been waiting for this for years, and it's turned out to be even better than what we'd hoped. The university is now offering up to $5,000 to help employees purchase a home near campus. SU is also offering employees up to $15,000 in a forgivable loan to fix up the house that they buy near campus. So if you put those two things together, students moving out, university program to bring more employees into the neighborhood, that could be a very positive thing. And then there's one last event, and that is that near Lemoyne College, there's also a growing number of student rentals there, and maybe we can address that issue before it gets too bad. So University Hill, what's special about the near campus neighborhood east of the university? Well, University Hill is one thing. It's within a few minutes walk of the highest concentration of good paying jobs in all of central New York. There are over 22,000 full and part-time jobs. 2/3 of these jobs, the full-time jobs, pay $40,000 a year or more, according to Center State CEO, and many pay over $100,000 a year. In the past, more of those who worked on the Hill used to live on the Hill. For instance, we looked at the Syracuse University directories. It's kind of amazing to think there used to be a directory at Syracuse University for every employee, and it gave their phone number and their home address. And we analyzed those to see who was living where. Back in 1970, about 1,000 SU employees lived within a mile and a half of campus. And by 1990, that had dropped to 707. That's during a time when the number of people working at SU was expanding greatly. So people have been leaving the area near SU, near University Hill. Where they've been going? To the suburbs. A significant number of city residents have moved to the suburbs over the years. In 1960, you can see the citywide average for the number of owner-occupied homes has fallen from 49% in 1960 to only 39% in 2010. So let's look at how the home ownership has changed near on the east side of campus. There are two census tracts encompassing the neighborhood. Let's call the one closest to campus, which is Tract 44, Siuna. It's not exactly the boundaries of Siuna, but we'll call it for that. And the one further from campus, Tract 45, we can call Westcott. By the way, for the 2020 census, these lines were completely redrawn, so it makes it hard to see exactly what's going on in 2020 broken out in this way. You can see the Westcott neighborhood started out with a much higher number, proportion of owner-occupied houses than the rest of the city. That percentage has fallen faster than the average for the city, but homeownership is still higher in the Westcott area than in the city as a whole. In the Siuna neighborhood, the red line here, homeownership started out slightly higher than in the rest of the city, but by 2010, homeownership had fallen by half, far below the city's overall average. So why is this loss of owner-occupied homes most extreme on the blocks closest to campus? To answer that question, we need to look back at the history of the neighborhood. This 1966 photo shows the old Archibald Stadium. Notice Hendricks Chapel at upper left. At this time, there were more than 100 rental properties available west of the old stadium for students living off campus. You can see from the inset photo, these buildings were primarily two-family houses with some apartments, small apartments. Here's a better picture. Make sure you still see it. At least some of these buildings were owned by Syracuse University, I think. Get a good look because in the next slide, they'll be gone. So that's what it's like now. When Archibald Stadium was demolished in 1978 to make way for the Carrier Dome, that off-campus housing was also demolished, replaced with parking lots, parking garages, and academic buildings. During this period, many buildings north of campus were also demolished, like the former chancellor's residence and the carriage house on University Avenue. This area was once known as Syracuse Highlands, with large, gracious homes. You can see in that little inset photo that that is the former chancellor's house, and next door is yet another house. So here's what that site looks like today, mostly parking lots. With much of the formerly available off-campus housing demolished, students started migrating into the single-family neighborhoods east of campus. From 1970 to 1980, the number of students east of campus exploded, more than doubling by 2000. The number had nearly, and by 2000, the number had nearly tripled. Notice the little downturn from 1980 to 1990 when SU downsized student enrollment by more than 3,000 students. Under Nancy Cantor, enrollment levels came back to what they had been before. Then, starting in 1990, students started to shift west towards campus. Notice that the number of students in the Westcott area actually decreased from 1990 to 2000, while the number of students in the Siuna area, closer to campus, increased by 550. And this, by the way, was when the university was downsizing the number of students by 3,000. Why have student rentals been migrating closer to campus? We created a database of over 100 student rental properties, single-family houses only. We got the rental price from online ads. We used Google to get the walking distance from each address to Hendricks Chapel. Then we compared price and distance, which you can see is highly correlated. If you want a house very close to campus, you better be prepared to pay around $750 per month or more. About 3/4 of a mile from campus, the cost drops to about $550 per month. And beyond that, it drops even further to around $450 per month. So the secret around SU has always been, if you want to find a cheaper place to rent, walk another 10 miles, 10 minutes from campus, 10, 15 minutes from campus. You might expect that the cheapest student rentals further from campus would be taken first every year, with the most expensive ones renting out last. Well, it's just the opposite. The most expensive rental houses closest to campus are the ones that go first, and the ones further from campus often stay on the market longer. In fact, the rents charged for single-family houses just east of campus are the highest anywhere in the city. according to the American Community Survey. Why are these rental houses so expensive and so profitable? Well, Syracuse is the only major upstate city that allows up to 5 unrelated persons in a single-family residence. Buffalo, Rochester, and Utica set the limit at no more than 4. Cortland, Albany, and Poughkeepsie allow no more than 3, and Utica sets the limit at no more than 2. When you have 5 students, when you allow 5 students in every house will come to have 5 bedrooms. If you have a house with only 2, 3, or 4 bedrooms, how do you get to 5? Well, one way is to turn a porch into a bedroom. You can see these 3 houses have enclosed a front porch to make a bedroom out of it. The one in the middle enclosed 2 stacked porches to make 2 stacked bedrooms. Another thing you can do is to put a temporary wall into a bedroom to create 2 bedrooms, like this is done. I've seen this done in houses in the neighborhood. You can also put a bed into the attic, even if there's just one stairway in and out, which the city often does not allow. And you ignore the potential consequences of that. This fire at 740 Euclid Avenue in 2008 destroyed the upper floors of the house. A tenant on the 2nd floor had to jump from the 2nd floor porch because flames were coming up the stairs. Fortunately, no one was in the attic that night. In April of this year, more than 50 firefighters responded to a double house fire on the 900 block of Ackerman. The Daily Orange reported that a dog in the attic apartment died in the fire. Fortunately, the dog's owner, who lived in this illegal attic apartment, was not there at the time of the fire. Too many cars. When our neighborhood was built more than a century ago, streetcars like this one were traveling to and from downtown every 10 to 15 minutes. Car ownership was not a necessity. In our neighborhood, many houses don't even have a driveway, let alone a garage. Our neighborhood was not designed to accommodate 5 to 10 vehicles at every address. Parking for 5 or more cars means turning backyard gardens into paved parking lots. Often the paved area is greater than what the city code allows. For instance, 721 Ostrom, total lot area, according to the assessor's office, 7,086 square feet. Total parking and driveway coverage, 4,250 square feet. The paved coverage is 60%. The maximum allowed in that district is 30%, so it's double. That's 5 cars in a single-family house. For a 2-family house, it can be up to 10 cars. And as you know, lots for 2-family houses usually aren't any bigger than they are for a 1-family house. Sometimes the center of the block looks like one big parking lot. Why not crack down on the backyard parking lots? It will just push cars into the front yard. This house on Comstock can't pave over the backyard because it's in the Berkeley Park Historic District. And there's no parking on Comstock. So the 5 owners weren't allowed to park on the lawn. They decided they'd park diagonally on the driveway and drive across the lawn to come and go. In our neighborhood, there are more cars than places to put them. There are cars parked over sidewalks, and there are cars parked on front lawns. An explosion of new student houses. For 40 years, not a single new dorm or student apartment complex was built on University Hill. That changed dramatically starting in 2009. 16 major projects have been built to date. Some were produced by area colleges and universities. Most were built by private developers. Combined, these new housing projects provide accommodations for over 4,900 students. 3 additional projects under city review now would accommodate an additional 1,200 students. Here are those 16 major student housing projects starting with SU's Ernie Davis Hall back in 2009. You see the most recent one, the Laurel, is still under construction, but they're renting rooms now already, getting prepared for the coming year. And this does not include the many smaller scale apartments built north of campus. For instance, this new apartment building at 106 Comstock, which replaced a 5-bedroom house with a 12-unit apartment building. So were there too many tax breaks for these projects? A lot of people seem to agree, maybe so, but in time they're going to contribute significantly to the city's tax base. So the bar on the left represents what these student housing projects are already paying in city taxes annually, $3.4 million annually. The second bar from the left the tallest one, represents the annual city taxes these projects will pay once all tax incentives for them expire, which is usually around 10 years for each one. So each one's, going to come to pay the full amount at a different time. The third bar from the left, 0, is the tax revenue these projects would have provided if all had been built by SU or SUNY ASF. And the bar on the far right represents the annual contribution Syracuse University is making to the city tax base. Notice that the new student housing projects are already providing more to the city's coffers than SU's admittedly generous contribution. Students are moving out. As a result of those 4,900 beds, we're seeing a dramatic drop in the number of students in the neighborhood. And this may be an underestimate because it is the period from 2014 to 2016, I think. Yeah, I can't read it there. It's the lowest number of students east of campus since 1970, which was before the Carrier Dome was built. So how do we ensure that the entire neighborhood benefits as students migrate to the new student apartments and leaving gaps in the neighborhood as they go? The list of resources for new homeowners in the neighborhood is impressive. The University Neighborhood Preservation Association already offers forgivable loans of up to $10,000. We've already mentioned Syracuse University's new guaranteed mortgage program, which will provide forgivable loans of up to $15,000. And also, Sam Gruber may be able to tell you more about this, but in a year or two, we hope, once it's done, the neighborhood east of campus will become one of the largest historic preservation districts in the state. And owner-occupied properties then will be eligible for a 20% refund through state income tax for improvements to the interior and exterior of the house. So for instance, if you spend $50,000 fixing up the exterior and interior of your house, 20% of that will be taken off of your state income tax, and it will be taken off year after year until that amount is reached. So is that going to be enough? There are some encouraging signs on the streets far from campus. We've seen a number of former rentals purchased lately by owner-occupants, and this is anecdotal, it's not specific research. For instance, a young couple bought 679 Allen Street. They're in the process of removing the bedrooms in the attic that the previous owner had installed. Their electrician said it was lucky there hadn't been a fire in the house, the way that the wiring had been done for those attics. A couple of graduate students offered to buy 136 Buckingham after their landlord put the property on the market and was getting no offers from investors. And then a young woman engineer has purchased 304, 306 Broad Street. It's a two-family. She's going to live in one unit and rent out the other, which, by the way, is a great way to build equity. If we can find more ways for people in the city to get into a two-family house and own it, the rent from the other unit can pay most of the mortgage, and that's a great way to build equity. There are also discouraging trends closer to campus. The last two owner-occupied houses that went up for sale near campus are these two, 130 Circle Road, which was purchased by investors in San Jose, California, 215 Stratford, which was purchased this year by investors in McLean, Virginia. So what do area homeowners want? We conducted a survey of over 100 area homeowners in 2020. 64 were SUNA members, 44 were non-members who owned homes but lived in our area. We asked homeowners to evaluate 7 measures that they thought might increase the number of owner-occupied homes in the neighborhood. A majority, 52%, gave an extremely effective rating to limiting the number of students who can occupy a single-family residence. Better code enforcement was a close second at 50%. Unfortunately, at this moment, there are no limits on the number of students who can live in a single-family house. The city's definition of family sets the limit at 5, which was always too high compared to what other cities are doing, and there are lots of reasons to set it lower. But the city hasn't been enforcing this for years. When we point out houses that have 6 or 7, there's very little the city believes they can do, let's put it that way. So getting control over the number of students in rental houses must be a part of any plan to revitalize this neighborhood as the number of students move out, and we hope to see more permanent residents move in. So as we wait for rezone to finally be passed, let's research best practices in other cities and towns to see how to best meld housing for permanent residents with student rental housing just east of campus. So that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you. So what I'll do, I'll open it up to questions from the council first, and then we'll go to the public. So does anyone have any questions relative to his presentation? No? Okay. So we can open it up for questions. If you want, you guys can line up right here. 1 to 2 minutes, I think, is sufficient. And if you can, it's not an official hearing, but if you can just tell us your name and the neighborhood that you live in, that would be good. I'm timing off my watch. Okay, thank you.
Yes, my name is Sam Gruber. I live at 123 Clark Street. I'm co-president of the Westcott Neighborhood Association. I will only take a brief moment. I want to reiterate most of what, I won't reiterate, but I agree with most of what Mike Stanton presented, and I want to applaud personally, and my organization also wants to applaud and support the work that Sayuna has done and Mike and his colleagues have done in in-depth research into the nature of the neighborhood and the trends in the neighborhood. And we do believe that this is research that should be carried out, not just for our neighborhood, but for others, by institutions and government agencies, and usually is not. So we applaud the civic organizations that step up to do this work and monitor this these important trends. Significantly, the university does give, as Mike indicated, I won't say give, it's a payment in return for which they get city streets and access to city services, $2.2 million. Some of that money goes to supposedly remediation for impacts upon the neighborhood, but the university itself does not undertake any of this type of research, even though it has the means at its various programs. We have been trying to meet with the head of off-campus housing from the Westcott Neighborhood Association, and that has been unsuccessful in that regard, because we wanted to find out what student residents were being told about things like trash, about parking, about driver safety, and what kind of instruction, what kind of enforcement there was, and we have yet to get significant satisfaction in that area. I want to call your attention to some handouts that I brought, which were prepared by one of our members, Andy Lay, who is a real estate professional and has been doing deep research and been monitoring for the last couple of years sales in the neighborhood. This is the neighborhood slightly, but significantly to the east of the neighborhood that Mike was primarily focusing on. It's what we call the Greater Westcott neighborhood, and it involves many streets that have been fairly stable owner occupancy areas to the east of Westcott Street. But we know that in recent years there's been a lot of purchases by absentee landlords, some landlords who are present in the neighborhood. We have several small, that is, landlords who live in the vicinity of the neighborhood and own 1, 2, 3, maybe up to 8 properties, and they're usually very good citizens and good stewards of the neighborhood because they are present. We've also seen in the pandemic a lot of buying of properties from people from outside the neighborhood, many of them who seem to be at least temporarily coming, though, as occupants. We celebrate the diversity of our neighborhood, and we like to see a mix of owner occupancy houses and also rentals, but primarily rentals for long-term tenants, for working people and others, not for people who are in for a semester or for a year and invest nothing in the community of which they are part. We, sorry, was that hard? We applaud policies that protect both owner occupants and renters. We want to emphasize that. What we're seeing now, and this is something Mike did not address, is that we're also seeing transitions of houses from the east side. So just as we're getting more pressure over the years from student housing coming from the university toward Westcott Street, now we're seeing a big uptick in Airbnb rentals in the traditional owner-occupant housing areas to the east of Westcott Street. And we are tracking that. It's a little hard to track, but we do it by listings because I don't think the city keeps a full registry of those things, and they're kind of temporary and transient. Some of these people officially register and pay hospitality taxes, others do not. One of the handouts shows a recent mapping showing some of these areas. Anyway, so we're very concerned about the integrity of our neighborhood. We believe it still has a great housing stock for families of all sizes and all shapes. We would like to see over the coming years as much policy put toward transitioning back toward the type of more residential neighborhood and mixed neighborhood that we had before the explosion of student enrollment beginning in the late 20th century. And we think there are a number of policies that the city can take and private investors, banks, and others can take to further that transition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Mike mentioned the historic preservation district. This is something we've been working on citywide with the State Historic Preservation Office for several years, and that will provide some assistance, not just to home owners though, but to landlords as well, who will get commercial tax property credits when that goes through.
You can, no, you can. Okay, so I'm just gonna ask you guys to respect the 2 minutes because there are, oh, okay, well, I said it was gonna be 1 to 2 minutes, so that's why. So I'm gonna start a timer on my phone just so everybody can have time to speak. Yep. I'll wait until you start speaking and then I'll start it. Thank you.
I practiced, so it should be under 2 minutes.
I'll give you like
Okay.
2 minutes and like 20 seconds.
All right, good afternoon. I am here to talk about the Syracuse University neighborhoods and the need for special districting.
Can you say your name?
Yep, it's on here. I'm going to say it at the end when my timer is done. To readdress my concerns over the single-family houses being bought and rented out by the bedroom to 4 or 5 unrelated people, and if we're honest, sometimes up to 8. So I started looking at the rezone Syracuse goals. The number 1 goal listed is to preserve and enhance existing land use patterns. To me, that would include preserving the existing R1 neighborhoods, which is understood to be low-density, single-family neighborhoods. Sadly, zoning isn't truly enforced, and because we are allowing apartment-style renting to happen, and without special districting set of rules that honor preserving the single-family neighborhoods, the denser the neighborhood is getting. So yes, let's preserve these neighborhoods. The second goal in the Rezone Syracuse statement reads, to protect the character and sense of place of Syracuse's neighborhoods. And if we continue to ignore the definition of R1 neighborhoods, then we are lacking the protection for these neighborhoods existing as R1 neighborhoods, a goal Rezone itself has set out to accomplish. My final comment is to draw attention to the verbiage needed in the special districting that would honor the Rezone goals to preserve and protect. If we believe Rezone will actually accomplish its own self-imposed goals, then special districting makes sense. As a safeguard, as a tool to uphold zoning that we must tighten up, and use special districting verbiage to include specific numbers for people allowed to dwell in a house within these neighborhoods. If not a family, as the OG definition states, then limits need to be held for 3 to 4 unrelated people with a provable reason for the exemption being enrolling in a college like Lemoyne or Syracuse University. My name is Danya Eads, and I live on Fellows Avenue on the east side of Syracuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello. I'm going to cut this short and I will email you the full text. My name is Carol Borg and I've lived at 943 Comstock Avenue since January of 1988. My husband taught for almost 40 years at SU and we fell in love with the architecture and the sense of community in this historic neighborhood. As my husband has often remarked, Syracuse is so unique. At a major research university, faculty and staff can afford to live within walking distance of work. However, we now live between two rental houses with a combination student rental / Airbnb in a house behind us. I have contacted members of this group before via letter and email in October of 2021, been a part of Zoom meetings with many of you as well as other city departments. My concerns about rezone. The first one, the unique issues in this and the Lemoyne College neighborhoods, which Mike has addressed and Danya has. I do want to point out that we're not the first city or town in New York State looking hopefully at enacting zoning laws to address the special issues arising from residential university neighborhoods, which are morphing into investor-owned student housing. I have more information for those who are interested in where to look for that. Does the city have the ability and the will to create, monitor, and enforce rules that protect owner-occupants' quality of life? Most of us did not buy into these neighborhoods for the student experience. My second comment is about rental homes. Why don't we have a policy? I know it's in the works, someone's working on it, addressing the rental homes in order to protect city residents from this intrusion. Investor owners have no interest in our quality of life, but our city should. My third one, which isn't even part of this, but it comes into zoning, are the VO scooters and e-bikes that have infested our university neighborhood. I have many questions on this. I'm doing some research to get more information, but the idea that you can drop, as the operations manager said, their idea was to drop and go, and that was by design. Well, they're dropping on sidewalks, on front lawns, and leaving them. When you call VO, apparently the way whatever their deal with the city is, they can leave them for 3 days before they have to come pick them up. Who wants to look at these things for 3 days or navigate around them if you're walking? We need that piece also addressed. As you consider changes to rezone, hopefully later next year, please include the concerns of owner occupants. As neighborhoods continue to change to commercial zones instead of homes, the sense of community is altered. Investors have a primary goal of generating income. That's not what homeowners do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, Common Councilors, for paying attention to this. My name is Mary Beth Hinton, and I live on Dorset Road, which is I live on the edge of Berkeley Park. Now, I just want to share a personal anecdote. 9 years ago, a friendly young family bought the house next door, and they maintained it very nicely. Having noticed that the character of our neighborhood was being destroyed by the conversion of too many family homes to student rentals, they promised that if they ever sold their house, they would not sell to a landlord, also known as a real estate investor, as so many owner-occupants in the neighborhood have done. But in 2017, my neighbors did sell to a landlord. They didn't even try first to find a family to buy their house, and I can guess the reason. The landlord paid them tens of thousands more for their house than a family could have. Since then, we have watched the deterioration of the property next door. The litter, the shrubs hacked almost to the ground to avoid the inconvenience of trimming them, the crumbling brick front steps, the shingle that fell to the ground and was left to rot for months. We have seen and heard the drunken beer pong parties in the summer, though the boys next door did agree to move their big beer pong table from the edge of our driveway to their backyard. In contrast, I regard my house as a community asset of which I have temporary stewardship, and so I have invested in its preservation and maintenance. But if the current trend continues and the rest of the houses in the neighborhood become student rentals, I will not want to live here anymore. The money I have spent on my house will have been wasted and my impression confirmed that my city, in effect, favors real estate investors over people who live in and care for their homes and their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Megan Davidson. I live at 333 Berkeley Street, Berkeley Drive, in Berkeley Park. Berkeley Park is one of the most livable areas close to the city center, within walking distance of downtown for many. Berkeley Park faces pressure from landlords who strive to purchase owner-occupied houses and rent each one out to large number of students who are not invested in the community. This lack of concern about the neighborhood displays itself in several ways in areas adjacent to or very close to Berkeley Park, including Ackerman Avenue, Euclid Avenue, and surrounding streets. I walk these streets every day and see garbage and broken bottles thrown onto sidewalks and front lawns, which is very dangerous if you're walking a dog. Cars and scooters parked on sidewalks and front lawns. Backyards paved to accommodate tenant parking. Speeding cars on narrow streets. Noisy parties and loud music late at night. Decrepit houses whose landlords do not fix serious problems, for example, sagging porches and peeling paint. The owner-occupied houses of Berkeley Park are vital to preserving the integrity of this key area of the city, and they are under attack. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes. My name is Judy Schmid. I used to live on the 800 block of Livingston. I'll admit, I threw in the towel. I live at Wyndham Drive, still in the city. In the summer of 1986, my husband, Stu Koenig, and I purchased our first home together after owning our own homes as bachelors. We wanted very much to live in the university area because of the proximity to the educational and entertainment programs available from SU. We loved our old home, although it needed repairs and a bit of refreshing, and we took that on while we both worked full-time, started a family, and while I finished my MBA at SU part-time. We both also got quite involved with the neighborhood association, SIUNA, both acting as president prior to Mike. We noticed a major shift in the neighborhood soon after we moved in. While some of our neighbors were grad students boarding or living in apartments and homes owned by active or retired professors and their families, more and more homes were suddenly under new ownership and full of undergraduates. As New York State had just bumped its drinking age from 18 to 21 in '84, more and more students sought off-campus housing where RAs didn't enforce the rules. From what some of our professor neighbors who were employed at SU told us at the time of the SU downsizing, the salary structure there for the remaining professors shifted, allowing some professors to move out of the neighborhood to pricier areas they could now afford. Their former homes were now available to landlords, and the change was fast. As the fabric of the area was fraying, the legislation enabling the original special neighborhood district was drafted in our living room. When the city was in negotiations with the university to take away streets under the guise of student safety, we made it our mission to invite ourselves to City Hall, to have our voices heard, and UNSAC was created, again, in our living room. And our newborn daughter was even at many of the City Hall meetings in her little basket. After 28 years of fighting to keep a balance between homeowner and renter in the neighborhood, we threw in the towel. We had hoped to gift the home to our daughter. 3 neighbors sold to landlords during one summer, and we were surrounded. Properties we thought were sold to families, only to find out that they were fronts for some investors. Too many years of asking young people to lower the volume so our toddler could sleep. Too many years of illegal parking lots charging money to suburbanites so they could park on lawns during sporting events and concerts. Too many years of having landscaping and porch furniture stolen. Too many years of parents of students screeching at us because they believed the tuition they paid to the university entitled them to free reign on a block with young children. We still live in the city, although there isn't a day that goes by that I don't miss the charm of our former home and all that went into restoring it. As more students choose to live in luxury apartments that are new and shiny, perhaps someday soon a family will see our former home and it's perfect for them. Close to wonderful schools, protected once again by a new special neighborhood district that represents the character of that very special area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kate Softly, Kate Jackson Softly, and I've grew up in the 70s. I know people here who know exactly what I'm talking about when I say I was on Clarendon Hill. Streaming by our house would be professors walking to work, just, you know, families teeming around. I now live in a house a few doors down from where my parents lived and are living, and of the 5 houses in a row, each one has fallen since 2008 when we moved in, and across the street as well. And that has just changed the character. So who's going to move in now? What family wants to move in? What are we going to do? Are we going to stay there forever? What's our future like? It's hard. I do not have problems with students because a lot of times they're very charming and lovely. It's not being able to build up a long-term relationship with their neighborhood because they're going to be gone the next year. So that's a hardship. One of the things I've noticed in policy is, for example, when things are done like asphalt on the backyard, instead of saying, okay, it's done in the dead of night, it's done, how come we don't say, okay, we go in there, the landlord's now gonna pay to jackhammer that stuff up. Violations should be treated as violations and corrected by the people who've actually done them. And then the other comment I had was also with my kids at Ed Smith and Levy, well, not Levy anymore, but Nottingham, there's a lot of busing that happens into the schools. Yep. Rashida. And why not, some of these houses are being emptied by students. How about working with some of the families that have to bus to Ed Smith, which is crazy. How about working with the agencies that work with them and getting them moved into some of the houses that are being emptied out by students who are moving to other facilities? That's just a thought, and I don't know how it could be accomplished, but I'd really like to see some proactive work on that end of things, of creative solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Gozan. I live on Maryland Avenue, and I'm next door to one of the houses that Michael featured in the slideshow. When my partner and I moved into our house 20 years ago, we had a really nice mix of owner occupancy, rentals, and all kinds of families on the block. But after the parking ordinance was overturned, the house between us and the corner 6 in a row flipped to student rentals, the ones that hadn't been already. And it's had an enormous impact. We also were really drawn to our location so that our kids could walk or ride their bikes to Nottingham and to Ed Smith. I really echo the comments of what a lot of other people have said. I don't want to live in a so-called faculty enclave. The idea of it makes me shudder. I really love the diversity of our neighborhood, including students. But I think if you are in a situation where instead of long-term renters who are really invested in the community, you have a high churn student rental situation, then it's incumbent on both the university and the landlords to communicate expectations clearly to those students. I think the idea of bringing down the legal number of unrelated persons in a house makes a lot of sense. I think that the wording could be crafted so that it's clear that all kinds of families are welcome in any size in homes. But what we're seeing with a lot of the student rentals is that instead of living together as a family, and to me that's not about whether you're related or not, or what the relationships are, or what the ages are, it's about sharing resources and having a communal situation. With student homes, what you see is a separate lock on every bedroom. You see in the house like the one next door to mine, which is a 3-bedroom house, originally is now 7 students. You see 7 different cars with no parking, several refrigerators. From an energy use perspective, from a trash perspective, the impact of a student rental like that is so wildly different from any kind of other group rental situation. So I just really want to thank you all for your attention to this, to Mike and Sienna for all the work that you do, and for the comments of our other neighbors.
Excuse me, could you tell me what street you live on?
I'm on Maryland Avenue. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Jeff Fuchs. I live on Berkeley Drive in Berkeley Park. My family and I have lived there since 1984. And several here have spoken eloquently about rules and regulations. But I'm going to get a little coarse. I'm going to tell you about life in Berkeley Park. I'm going to tell you that the volume of bass notes rattles the dishes in my wife's china cupboard. after calls to the police. This is not an occasional, this is a regular occurrence. My wife was sitting on our screen porch, which faces Berkeley, and a young man walked up to our shrubs, opened his zipper, and urinated facing her into our garden. We have trash on the yard, and I kind of make it a point to watch where it comes from. And particularly in the nice weather, I'll pick up the trash and return it to the house of origin. Nobody else seems to want to do this type of thing. And I pick up the trash, and I walk to the corner, and I walk up on the porch, and I'm told, "Get the F off my porch." Once again, the city is reluctant or unable to do anything about this sort of issue. But that's what the neighborhood has become. My kids grew up there. They're in their 40s now. But the people who have moved in don't have kids. There are no little kids. We used to serve 125 or 130 Halloween visitors. We had 10 this year. So the neighborhood has changed, not for the better. And the house next door to me that once was a family house and then became a student house for 4, now has 6. And several of the houses I can see from my home have occupants on the 3rd floor, which I thought was not legal if there was no exterior fire escape. But apparently that no longer matters. Awful lot of parking on lawns, awful lot of parking on newly paved spaces, and a lot of trash in the street. And personal calls to the landlord result in no change. Visits to these homes usually results in, at the very best, a 1-week change. The city has not been able to help us about this type of thing either. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Savid. I live on Livingston Ave. I moved in 30 years ago. My wife and I have been there for a while. Our daughter went to city schools, graduated from Nottingham some years ago. I want to thank everyone for being here. Usually the only way I see people is by walking through the neighborhood, which we do most every night, sometimes all the way up by Mike's house, and I appreciate the slideshow and the presentation. When I moved in, half of our block, the 800 block, was homeowners. We're now down to 5. 3 of those families are here. One of the former families is here too. Life has changed dramatically the last few years. It's much louder. There's more trash. And we live with it. If we didn't want to live there, we didn't have to. Nobody forced me to buy the house there. We like some of the energy. We don't hate all the students. I don't like the fact that every year that they get younger, and it's worse, their parents get younger every year. The landlords have different rules. And there are a lot of problems, and I honestly don't know what anybody could do about it. So I'll let you puzzle over that. Our trash is Tuesday morning. You're supposed to put out the trash the night before. First thing Monday morning, half the landlords have it out, the rest of it have it out by noon. I've spoken to them. Why don't they observe the law? It costs them more money. They have to keep staff on by 5 o'clock, and all of them want to go home. That's reasonably infuriating. It's hard to keep up with some of those things. On the other hand, Tuesday morning, pretty quickly afterwards, they pick up their trash pretty well. 2 little anecdotes about life there. I had to walk a block and a half away one night to track down the bass that was rattling my windows. And the kid was sitting on the front porch. I don't know how he could hear. It could be pretty deafening at times. Last fall, it's 11:30 at night. My wife and I are in bed. We've turned the lights out. There's a rattling at the front door. I go down the steps. I see light peering in. Somebody has their cell phone out. They're trying to figure out how to put their key in my front door. I opened the front door. They said, "Thank you. We're happy to be home." They didn't realize that it wasn't their home. They were that intoxicated. I checked on them the next day. They didn't quite know where they had been. The summer before that, maybe it was a sub-rental. I couldn't tell. Some people bring in pets. and we thought it was an odd-looking dog. It was a pig. It was a potbelly pig, which was very cute and very well trained. There are some benefits to being in the neighborhood, and we all have some nice stories. I've learned lots of drinking games, and their names, well, anyway, thank you all very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you all. My name is Heidi Hart Gorman, and I live on Westmoreland Avenue, previously on Kensington Place. And I recently took over as the executive director of the University Neighborhood Preservation Association. And we certainly, as an organization, appreciate the work of our partners and of all of you and the attention to this issue. When my wife and I first moved back here to Syracuse, we'd been in Boston for about 13 years, and we knew specifically that we wanted to live in the city of Syracuse. And I lost count of the number of people who said why. And you all know that we already have major major employers in the city whose recruiters tell their new hires, don't buy a house in the city. We already have a hard time getting people to want to live here and buy here. I think as an organization, I have heard so much already just in the last couple months, concerns certainly about student housing. Those are the same concerns that we've had for a very long time, but more and more about short-term rentals. Because these are the houses that don't benefit anybody except for the person who owns it. There's no students, they're just people who are here for a weekend, and we know that there are places in the Westcott neighborhood where there are 4 or 5 of these on a couple of blocks. And we need owner-occupied, which is what we try to promote, but we also need long-term, affordable, quality rentals for people who aren't students and want to live in the neighborhood. And I have had the pleasure of living very near rental houses who had local owners. And those were people that we knew and we could reach out to, and we knew if there was an issue, they would be there and they would be able to take care of it. It wasn't somebody in China or California or Texas who you couldn't even really find a real person to try to talk to. So thank you very much for your efforts on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, I just want to say thank you to Mike Stanton for putting this together, and thank you all for your comments. It doesn't go unnoticed. We all are residents here in the city of Syracuse. We all live in different pockets in different neighborhoods. So we do share some of the pain that you guys are going through. I don't live near students, but I live near people who have the maturity of students. And I have neighbors across from me, neighbors next to me, that owners are from Mexico, never been to the United States, and their tenants are wild. So I totally get it. Is anybody here from the administration that wants to say anything? I know we have Commissioner Collins. Yes.
There's somebody here that would like to speak.
Oh, well, the microphone is yours. It wasn't close to anybody.
Should have been in line.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, you should have been.
So after you, we'll have Commissioner Collins or Jake come up if they want.
My name is Joseph Tupper. I've been a landlord in the university area for about 40 years. I've been a professor at SU for 51 years. So I have a pretty good perspective of what the examples given today. A lot of them have merit. Some of them I think are a little over the top or pretty rare. But I want you to know from the perspective of a landlord, nothing could make us happier than when these houses go up for sale. And let me specify what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what we refer to as the student occupied East neighborhood, which basically is stand at Comstock, look down Euclid all the way to Westcott, look a couple blocks on either side, okay? You're talking Livingston, Sumner, Ackerman, Lancaster, that area right there, okay? That area is at least 85% student occupants, all right? I'm not talking about Berkeley, I'm not talking about Westcott, Allen Street, that type of thing. This is the area where all of our properties are. I'm one of the bigger landlords in the area. Along with 4 or 5 others, we as a group are known as SPOA, which is a group of landlords strictly related to student occupancy. We own, as a group, probably about 85% of the rental houses in that area, okay? Nothing could make us happier than when a house in those neighborhoods that I'm talking about goes up for sale. I personally, and I know my fellow landlord, would be delighted if an owner-occupant would buy it. But they don't. The houses can sit for months. The owner-occupants don't buy them. Why? First of all, you move in with a family with young children. There are no other kids in the neighborhood. They're all students, all right? The prices are very high. It's the highest assessment in the city, which, as an aside, I hope councilors realize what an asset this is in terms of tax revenue to the city of Syracuse. This is a huge amount of money going into the coffers of the city. There are other issues why people aren't buying. I don't want to get into the arguments about them, but one that always stands out is issues with the school system, all right? Owner-occs, they're told, sure, buy outside the city. What's the first thing that comes up? School district, okay? We can't change that, all right, as landlords. We can't make owner-occs buy these houses, but we would be very happy if they did, really, but we can't do it. You know, think about it. You have a major research university. There is none that I know of in this country that when you have that situation, the neighborhoods around those universities are students. Students want to live close to the university, just like the faculty want to live close to the university. The market sets the rules, okay? And that's what happens. The comments that Mr. Stanton made regarding the decline in the number of rentals, I'm going to hold on that. I'm not convinced, okay? There has been some shrinkage due to the high rises. There's no question about that. But the reality is, in my case, we have 100% occupancy. My other landlords that I talk to have not expressed any degree to me of vacancies. And if it's any indication of the pressure on the rentals, we are not only 100% occupied now, we are 100% rented 1 year from now, the 23-24 academic year.
That's crazy.
So the pressure is there. It will always remain there. There are students who don't want to live in a high-rise. They think they're like fancy dormitories, okay? There are students who cannot afford them. We have rents that are half of what are being asked in these new high-rises, okay? And there are parents who won't pay those rents. They can't pay those rents, all right? We offer houses with hardwood floors, fireplaces, a porch, a lawn. Students like that. You like that, okay? So when we're all deciding here, you know, dump on the landlords, keep in mind that there's, you know, we're not actively telling people, homeowners, don't buy these houses. We just sit there, and when the house doesn't sell, finally we make an offer on it, buy it.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
What's your name?
Thank you. Pardon? Oh, Joseph Tupper, Tupper, yeah. We have,
Thank you. We're going to have Commissioner Collins come up. He's going to kind of give us some closing remarks and kind of let us know what's going on moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilors, Commissioner Michael Collins, Neighborhood and Business Development. I'll be quick because I know we're at time. First of all, thank you to everybody for coming out, and all of you as well. I just wanted to touch real quick on some of the points that were brought up to talk about what's been long underway and in force. So code enforcement came up a number of times through the latest round of the shared services agreement with SU. We have decided to allocate some of that money to add a code inspector specific to the areas around the university. And when you look at our numbers from 2019 to 2022, across the city, we've increased code enforcement by 106% as far as writing citations. Within this neighborhood, we've increased it 322%. So there has been extreme enforcement on a lot of these rules. The challenges that are in front of us often are not on what we're able to bring forward when it comes to code enforcement. And on top of it, we've also been writing significantly more parking tickets. SPD's been much more responsive with, very proactive, very responsive with that. One of the challenges that we have with some of the more the landlords and houses for which they are incalcitrant can be with the courts. So we can write, we can enforce, and then if it doesn't happen through our Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, which is, as you all know, our first step, we then go to courts. Issues such as paved backyards, that came up. Yeah, that's a significant problem. It's not that we don't enforce, it's that it is up to the courts then to decide whether what action they're going to take. So that's one of the ongoing challenges we have in front of us. But overall, there's been a tremendous amount of work so far, which is why we've seen a lot of improvement on the code enforcement issue, and certainly more to come.
And a noise, there's no, you was going to say something?
Go ahead.
As far as the noise with the parties and stuff, there's nobody here from the police today. I probably should have thought about that. But so when they're calling to say, like, they call at 11 o'clock, hey, there's a party going on next door, say the cops show up, they turn the music down for a minute or so, and then they leave, then they turn it back up, and then they call again, then the cops may not come out that second, third time. Like, what's relief for that? Because I even have that issue in my neighborhood. Like, what's the relief for them?
Counselor, the relief for that is for the police to give a violation of the sound ordinance.
Right.
ticket,
That's
which
what I was saying.
makes
But
them
there's
have to
nobody
go-
here from the police
which makes them
department.
have to go to community court and answer it, or they get
Yeah.
a $75 fine. That is the solution to that.
Because I think that's something that, we don't have to wait for a rezone for situations like that to be able to solve those type of issues. You know what I mean? Like, there's some things that they did say that can be solved before we do anything else. It's just a matter of us enforcing it.
By the way, that violation goes directly to the person like running the party. Doesn't go to the the property owner. So
yeah. But I just wanted to address that because you guys are here. Like, there are some things that you are stating that are issues for you that should be and are able to be addressed right now. Like, we don't have to wait on every issue.
Can I ask a question? Because what I'm curious to know about, Commissioner, so when they talked about the attic apartments, that is illegal, correct?
It can be illegal. So if it's been, if the house has been sprinkled, there's multiple forms of egress, and it's been fully approved because it's got approval from the zoning board. Then there are cases where that can happen. The aggression that we've had towards rental registry, not just increasing the amount of rental registries, but also getting into apartments. And honestly, we've had some of the university area landlords much more compliant with allowing us in to be able to inspect apartments than we do in many other parts of the city. Still issues, obviously, but we do need to recognize where there's been some success. We've been able to get in and take a look that way. Otherwise, again, it's a court issue of being able to determine that we've got enough reason to take it to court and use those resources to be able to force our way in.
And I understand that, but do we have, like you said, you have to be able to get in. I get that. But do we have, like, when we do know that there's attic apartments or attic bedrooms, do we have a list of those particular properties that have these?
I would, not sure if we do or not.
Not trying to make your life hard, just.
No. It's not a question that I could answer for you specific to, do we have certainly we know every property that is permitted to have that. You're concerned about the ones that are unpermitted.
Like, is there like a blacklist?
Right, like,
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, when you show the video and these apartments are catching on fire because they're not electrically sound, I'm curious to know, how do we track?
Understood. So any apartment that we know, any existing unit that we know to be illegal, those are the ones that we are doing code enforcement on. So there's nothing out there that we know to be illegal and know to exist illegally that we haven't done. Yeah, so taking questions here, I can speak afterwards. I'm not.
Well, I think, Michael, your code inspector can't enter unless you're let in.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's basically it. You can't, either a property owner or a tenant's got to let you in order to find out what's going on.
Yeah, and so, to Council President's point, and Councilor Hogan, you're exactly right. We have to be allowed in. Anytime that we know of a unit that is in existence and illegal, we work to get in.
But these properties are also on the rental registry, right?
Yeah.
So they're subject to inspection automatically every 3 years, is it?
Every 3 years. Yep.
So that would be a way to detect whether or not there's illegal occupancy.
I was just wondering if we had a running list of the ones that.
They're subject to exterior inspection.
Yeah, they're required for exterior. It's we're not, as a city, we're not allowed to require interior, but we do work very closely with the landlords to be able to do it.
Mike, have we ever?
And tenants.
All right, thank you. Like, have we ever tried to build a relationship with Syracuse University and say, hey, we know you have students that are living on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get a list of it? Can we go to your orientation? Can we make it mandatory that these are the things? So we're trying to build a relationship, but also seeing how many of their students are off. Like, because they know where their kids, they know exactly where they are.
So
right?
So we work closely with Department of Public Safety between code enforcement, SPD, and DPS for the city. So anytime we've got issues that are that we notice or are brought to our attention, then we absolutely work with DPS. As far as the Office of Off-Campus Housing, we are anytime that we're aware of a situation that's a problem, we always notify them.
But we don't have any like relationship. We don't have like a list. We don't have a something.
We do not have a list of every student from SU.
Or percentage, right? Because they know exactly.
In the same way, we don't have a list from any other landlords across the city of who their tenants are.
Right.
That's a really big. That's a really big thing across the city. We're not saying to landlords on the north side who's living in your apartment.
No, not like that, but like, so SU, it's enrollment of how many kids a year, right? So they know exactly when you fill out an application, who's staying in this dorm, who's staying off campus. Do we have a list of how many off-campus students, as far as enrollment from SU, is staying off campus? Do we have any?
We don't know. We don't have a specific list of like that. No, because I think the question would be what would we do with that list? What we're most concerned about is the properties themselves, and what's happening with those properties, quality of life issues, safety issues.
What would be education piece? I think some of it is education, right? I think it's about building relationships and letting the students and, as you know, expectations, right? Sometimes, kids come from neighborhoods, like this is their first time out and they're wild, right? They're like, I'm away from my parents, SU costs a lot, right? So a lot of those students who are staying off campus, come from sometimes good quality of life, right?
Yeah, and we can't speak for, I can't speak for what SU does to that. I'm told it happens, but that's not something I'm in a position to speak to.
So is there any way we can do?
They say they do not have it. They say they ask students to provide it at registration. They often don't. A penalty for not doing so.
So, Michael,
Yeah, I'm done.
the certificate of occupancy So where does it play in all of this?
So if it's 3 units or more, then we absolutely are allowed to get in. If it's 1 or 2 unit building, then it's the exterior inspection, and we work hard to get in.
Oh, so they do go inside.
But at
So,
first, on your
so
own.
if it's a 3 unit or more, then the required certificate is both exterior and interior inspection. If it's 1 or 2 units, it's exterior.
Always. You never go in unless it's
We
requested.
always work to find our way in. We are not allowed to force our way in. The courts have been very clear about that.
But the tenant or the owner can give you permission to enter,
And so
correct?
we've got a significantly higher rate.
But is it mandated?
No, the courts have been very clear. We are not allowed to do that. So tried it and was disallowed. Lost the lawsuit.
95% of the city, well, let's say every city councilor here at one time or another would love to be anointed a marshal to be able to write violations and
Right.
everything else. 95% of what was brought up here was enforcement. And we've addressed that through the budget with Commissioner Collins, with extra code people. The police department, of course, is understaffed and under-resourced. And, you know, there isn't a time when I don't call about ticketing cars. And not only in my particular council district, but I know we all do. So, I mean, this is an enforcement issue. And the legislation sometimes doesn't, you know, we can pass all the legislation and do all the policy we want, but without the enforcement backing it up, things don't happen. In fact, Sam, by the way, this map is going to go down to the Deputy Commissioner of Assessment. She asked for it when she saw it here, so we're going to accomplish something here. Well, that'll be great. She'll love it, so.
He was just here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilors.
All right, thank you guys. Again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you to all the neighborhood members that came out to speak, and thank you, councilors. All right.